Okay, we are back. Yes, right here for Community Voices Live, not live, on KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. We are actually pre-recording this show, so the phone lines are not open, and I am so glad that you are disappointed about that, because I know, I know that you love calling in, and we love to have you call in, but today is a pre-recorded show, so we're continuing this conversation that's rooted in Tevin Campbell's Can We Talk? And we were talking about this before the break, about how important it is for us to be in conversation with people who are different than we are, because they give light to who we really are. In relationship with other people, we learn more about ourselves. And as we come to learn more about ourselves, we really are forced and challenged and pushed and nudged to see the truth about who we are, especially in this case, as it relates to our complicity in the system of white inhumanity that continues to push this narrative that Black people in particular are not worthy, are not deserving, are not equal in ability, in intellectualism and capacity, like we're just not up to par, just not on the same level as folks who the world identifies as white. And so we're having when we talk about having conversations, I want to tell you something that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was in conversation with a friend of mine, and as part of the conversation, as the conversation was unfolding, I began to ask questions. And when I asked a question, I wanted my friend to answer the question. And as he began to answer the question, that gave rise to more questions. So as he was answering the question, I was asking questions about the answer to the question. Okay. And so that's what was happening. And then he began to get frustrated with my questions. And he wanted me to stop asking questions so that he could finish answering the first question. And I said, well, wait a minute. I need to ask the question so I can understand the answer. And he gave this analogy. This analogy said that he is one who knows how to cook gumbo, and let's just say that the two of us are together while he's cooking gumbo, and I want to learn how to cook gumbo. If I keep asking him questions about the ingredients that are being used in the gumbo, he'll never finish making the gumbo. And if he never finishes making the gumbo, then he won't reach his predetermined end. And so he has to finish making the gumbo, so he can't afford for me to keep asking questions about the ingredients being used in the gumbo, because I'm stopping him from getting to where he's trying to go. And I said, okay, let's follow with this analogy. And I said, but if you don't allow me to ask questions about the ingredients that you are using in the gumbo, when you finish making the gumbo and you put it in front of me to enjoy, I'm not going to eat it. And I'm not going to eat it because I don't know what's in it. So I'm not sure that this is something I want to ingest. And so therefore, how can I enjoy the experience of you having made this gumbo for me if I'm skeptical about eating it? But had you taken the time to answer my questions, then I would be ready, I would be willing, I would be more prone to take the bite and to eat and to enjoy what has been prepared for me. And so as I began to reflect on that conversation, I realized that the fundamental difference between me and my friend is the purpose of the conversation. For him, it was about, I need to get to this. You ask me a question, it's important that I give you the answer. And for me, the answer itself was not as important as how we got to the answer. So the art of conversation, for me, conversation is an art. There's an art to the conversation that allows me to be able to engage with you. I want to be part of it, of the dialogue. I want us to go back and forth. I want us to have an exchange. I want us to agree. I want us to disagree. I want us to agree to disagree. I want us to challenge. I want us to push back. Like, I want all of that to happen. I don't want to just sit here and let you talk to me until you feel like you've given me the information that you want me to have the way you want me to have it. And so I'm really excited about going back to him and telling him how I feel about what he said to me, and to ask him what he thinks about this idea of, you're thinking I've got to get to this end in the conversation, almost like you have an agenda of some sort, and me saying, oh no, I'm just along for the ride.
And And I think that's where it becomes problematic for so many people, a lot of people, because um, most people aren't, they don't look at conversation as an art. They don't look at conversation as being this journey to a certain place or to a certain point. When you start getting certain conversations, and especially when you get in conversations about race, what comes into play most of the time is this idea of I I believe what I believe. And if you, in doing this conversation, I don't, if I figure out or I come to a place where I don't know, then it becomes frustrating. I do understand what you're saying from both sides. If he's trying to make something and his focus is on making it, then it's difficult to have to have interruptions or have distractions. And on the other side, well, I need to ask these questions because when you get to where you're going, I may not understand it. And that's what's happening in this world, is because there is an agenda set up by white society that this is where I'm going. When you start asking questions, especially as Black people, we start asking these questions, it frustrates white America because I'm trying to get somewhere, you're interrupting me. But once you get to where you're going, you want me to enjoy what you've created. And I'm like, how can I enjoy what you've created when you haven't given me a voice in this space?
Yeah, because I think that when we back up to what you're saying, like the language that you're using around these questions, calling them distractions and calling them interruptions, that's what my concern is. Why is a question? Why is it that a question is a distraction? Why is it that a question is an interruption? Why isn't it part of the communicative process? And that's where I have, and I've been dealing with this for quite some time in my life. You begin to ask people questions, and some people don't just think of them as interruptions or distractions. They think of them as challenges, right? And they begin to get offended by the fact that you're asking. Let's think about when you go to the doctor. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I've gone to the doctor, especially with my mom, and I began to ask questions, and it's almost like, how dare you ask me a question? Like, I'm the doctor. You do what I say because I'm the one who's the expert in the room. And I'm saying to him, no, you may be the expert in the room in terms of medical jargon, in terms of medicine and how medicine works and how the body interacts. But I'm the expert on my own body. And my mama is the expert on her own body. So you have to give us an opportunity to ask questions based on what you're saying as it relates to what we know about our own bodies. And so when we're asking questions like why some people get mad, because when I was in conversation with my friend, he was getting a little testy. He finally said, I want you to let me answer the question the way I want to answer the question. I said, oh, okay. Well, there it is then. So that's to me what this is about. This is about you wanting to give me the information you want me to have, the way you want me to have it, and you want me to receive it and be grateful for it.
Well, it goes back to this one thing. One of the problems that we had, especially, I think it's a problem with a lot of people, and especially with Black people, is because we've never felt that we've had a certain amount of control. And so when you don't have control, or you feel like there's this authoritative figure, whether it's parents, whether it's the church, whether it's society that's constantly telling you what to do, telling you who you are, telling you how you should act. And then when you start questioning it, it's like, how dare you question me? And it's like, when you look at how Black people have been treated in this country, we were not allowed to ask questions. We were not allowed to challenge. We were not allowed to learn how to get into this real conversation. And so now we get defensive. Black people get very defensive is when you're in conversation and there's a challenge. And it's really not a challenge, it's a question. But we take it as a challenge, like, oh, you're taking away control from me. You're taking away, now you become the authority, because now I have to stop what I'm saying. I have to stop my thinking. I have to stop where I'm going, and I have to answer you. Now you have the control in the conversation, and I want to keep control. So it frustrated a lot of Black people. And
oh, go ahead.
I will admit I was like that, because I would stop in a heartbeat and say, I don't want to talk no more. Forget it, because you're not letting me tell it the way I want to tell it. You want me, what's the phrase? Oh, you want me to tell you what you want to hear, which has taken control away from me.
Well, then I think that for Black people, going on, building on what you said, though, then Black people then have to recognize their complicity in this idea that it's about white people are trying to control me. They don't want me to ask questions. But when Black pastors in particular, in the Baptist church in particular, because that's my experience, my lived experience, you can't ask them a question in church. Because whenever you ask a question about God, it's like, oh no, you can't question God. And to me, it's the same thing, right? Yes. Now, you don't want anybody to control you, but then you turn around and control other people and not allow them to ask questions in the way that, oh, wait a minute. So you're saying I might have gotten confused, because I thought you were saying at first that when white people want to have these conversations, they don't want to hear our voices in them because they want to control the narrative. They want to control the dialogue. And I'm trying to say yes. And then Black people turn around and do the same thing. Is what I'm trying to say.
Do the same thing.
Especially when we are in church settings, like you don't want anybody to ask you a question about what you're saying about this God. And again, I think it goes back to what I have learned. What I have learned is that the people that get the most offended, I'm not talking about people that may feel like it's a distraction, but the people that get the most offended by questions is usually because they don't know the answer to them.
Yes.
And rather than say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, or can I get back to you? We have this feeling that, and I know that the world has created this feeling in us that we have to know all the answers. We have to look like that we know everything. We got to act like we know everything. We have to be the expert. And really, maybe we need to redefine what it means to be the expert, because that doesn't mean you have all the information. Like, who has all the information? Nobody has all the information. And so to not be able to say, I don't know, that is a problem.
Yeah. And so now it feeds into another narrative that we've been taught we're inferior. We've been taught we've been told that we're not educated. We've been told that there's something wrong with us, that even to the point when you have a conversation with white people or in other spaces, even in Black conversations, oh, you speak well. Oh, you're very articulate, and you're like, hold up, you mean what do you mean? What do you mean?
Oh, absolutely. So in the work that I do as a DEI expert, diversity, equity, inclusion, and they're adding letters to this. You know how LGBTQ used to be GL.
Now it's the whole alphabet. It's the whole alphabet.
So it used to be, when I first started the work, it was DEI, but now it's diversity, equity, inclusion. We're also adding a B for belonging, also adding a J for justice. And so then some people are adding an A for access. And so this acronym gets to be longer and longer and longer. And to me, now that is a distraction when we start doing all of that. But in this work that we do, one of the things that when we talk about a bias, what it means to have implicit bias, where you are believing something about a group or a population of people that's based on some information that you can't even source. You don't know where you got this information from. It's just something that is embedded in you. It comes from your family, it comes from your church, it comes from your friends, it comes from the media, it comes from all of these places, but you don't remember the exact moment that you were taught it, but it's in you and you are living into it. And so this bias, when we begin to help people to think about and recognize that they do carry these biases, one of the ways that we do that is to ask you to think about what surprises you. When you are in relationship with a person, when you are interacting with a person and something surprises you, ask yourself, why does that surprise you? So when you hear anybody, because it's not just white people who say this, but when you hear anybody say, you are so articulate, you are very like that, why are you surprised by that? That means that you didn't expect me to be. Why did you not expect me to be able to have an intelligent conversation? Why did you not expect me to have an expanded vocabulary? Why did you not expect me to be able to ask questions that stump you? Why? And that is where your bias is rooted. You didn't expect it because you believed that I was not able. And why did you believe that I was not able? And when you begin to boil down, when you begin to drill down on all these whys, and you get to that moment, that point, for most people, it's because of your race, because I'm Black. You didn't think I could do it because I am Black. And so we have to be in conversation. Can we talk? Because we have to be in conversation for that moment of surprise to happen. Because I need that moment of surprise to happen so that you can begin to see yourself reflected in the things that come out of your mouth.
Yeah, and we also have to understand when we start talking about conversations and when we start talking about discussions, dialogues, there's this back and forth. And so there are a lot of people who feel that when you're being asked questions, and the questions that are being asked should be questions that try to go deeper, that try to get you to name or talk about things that are going on and things that you're trying to define. But a lot of times people look at it as being interrogated. I know as a child, when my grandparents and my aunts who raised me were trying to find out certain, they started asking these series of questions. And so you couldn't say, I don't know. So now it's well, where you at when this happened? And well, I was here. Well, what did you do? How did this happen? How did that happen? And so when we're in these conversations and people start asking questions, well, how does that make you feel? Why do you believe that? Why are you surprised? And, now a lot of people start to feel like, oh, you interrogating me. And if you're interrogating me, then you're starting to believe a certain thing about me, or you think I'm lying, or you think I don't know. And so those things start to happen. I think one of the things that need to happen is we need to learn, rethink how we communicate, how we talk, how we discuss, and start to become comfortable. Very few people are comfortable in conversations.
Yeah, I've been accused of being an interrogator. You laughing? Why are you laughing? Because you are one of the ones who has accused me of being an interrogator.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I have ever said that Denise Donnell is an interrogator.
Well, I have been accused of that on more than one occasion. Another thing that happens with me in conversation, because I'm going to ask questions. Sometimes when you said that, people are asking questions because they want to go deeper. People are asking questions because they want to make sure that we are defining things in a way that both parties in the conversation understand. I sometimes ask questions because I want to make sure you hear what you're saying. Like, I want to give people an opportunity to hear themselves, because sometimes I think that we are rehearsing and we are regurgitating things that somebody else has said, and that we really haven't taken the time in our own bodies to think about it, and we just say what we've heard. And so I give people a chance to say, wait a minute, did you mean to say blah, blah, blah? Is that what you were trying to say? Because sometimes people, when they hear themselves, they say, well, no, I didn't mean that. And if you double down on it, then I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. And then once we begin to double down on it, as you continue to double down, that's when you realize, well, no, I really don't want to say this because I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought deeply about it. I haven't thought critically about it. But now you feel like you're in a hole that you've dug for yourself because you wouldn't take the time when I asked the question the first time. When I asked the question the first time, I'm giving you an opportunity because I know in my heart, in my intuitive space, in my body, I know that you didn't mean to say that. So I'm giving you the opportunity, but you won't take it. And then people get mad. So now you're mad that you're trying to twist my words. No, I'm putting you in remembrance of your words, which is what the Bible tells us to do. We're talking about God, but we can take the principles of the Bible and apply it to our human relationships. And that's what I choose to do. And so then I'm saying to you, no, I'm just telling you what you just, how are you mad at me for something that you just said?
Well, I think, and you're right. I think one of the things that has happened before, we weren't allowed as Black people to learn how to conversate. We weren't allowed to be educated. We weren't allowed to think critically, think deeply. And then poor whites, they did have the, the same thing, what you call opportunity or whatever. And so you had that disconnect. And now because of social media, people really don't communicate face to face a lot. They text, they email, they have these conversations on Facebook. And because you're not in there, it's hard to get someone to think more critically or more deeply. And you are right. There are so many things we hear. And once we hear it, we think we know it. And then when we repeat it, and we're challenged on it, it's like, instead of just saying, you know what, that's what I heard. Okay, well, you heard incorrectly. But nobody, like I said, you take away the control of that person. That's how a lot of people feel about it. You take away control of me. You telling me what to think. You're telling me, no, that's not my intent. I didn't mean it that way. But then again, you said it. And now that you said it, you have to own up to it.
And while you were talking about that, I thought about the disservice that we've done to our children. Because a lot of time, many of us, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but many of us, especially in my Black experience, grew up in a home where children were supposed to be seen and not heard. And so we did not invite children into conversation. We certainly did not take the time to model what effective communication looks like. And we certainly didn't take the step to teach them how to communicate. And so some of the problem that we have when we're talking about collective liberation is that we have these gaps in communication between the generations. And part of that gap is this idea that some of us still practice, that a child can't tell me anything and that you too young, what do you know? So ageism is at work, keeping us from being as solidified as a collective as we need to be, because we don't appreciate, we don't value, we don't make space for the voices of young people. And young people have a lot to teach us, a lot to inform us on, a lot to educate us about, if we would simply be willing. So when we ask this question, can we talk? It's so many layers to it. And we have to begin to narrow down to what steps can we take to make it so that we can live into the answer to that question, which is, yes, we can talk. Well, how can we talk? First of all, I need to build a relationship that invites the conversation, because you can't just walk up and start talking to anybody about anything, right? But I have to create a space, invite you into relationship so that I can create and begin to build some trust so that we can talk, and then that we can talk in ways that are meaningful and significant and transformative.
And with that, one of the things that we have to do, and this way it becomes difficult sometimes, is that we can't be afraid. You can't be afraid to go into some of these spaces and have these discussions. Growing up, class played a lot, not just race, but class played a lot. If you were educated, so-called educated, and you talk educated as a Black person, you were labeled uppity, or you think you somebody, and so it was difficult. I remember watching my family, those who were educated, had went to school, who had professional jobs, and those, and nothing against those who had just what I call general labor jobs, and who hadn't had the opportunity to go to school, or go to college, or whatever. And so when they're having these conversations, and certain words would come out, or you would ask them to expound on something, and the first thing, it never failed, the person who was asked that would get upset. Oh, you think you are uppity, so you think because you got a degree. And so we have to get past that and not be afraid. It took me a while, and I'm in professional spaces. I've been in these professional spaces. I've been in these conversations, and I had to learn not to be fearful, not to be afraid. It's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. And one thing that the Reverend Dr. Denise Darnell has taught me, if we're in conversation, whether it's on the radio or off out of the studio, if there's a word that she uses and I don't know, it used to be where I would fake it, but now, like, hold up, stop. What does that mean?
Well, but that's interesting because when you talk about the role of class, because I grew up as middle class Black, which I understand is not the same as middle class white, but I grew up as middle class Black. And so we found power in the education, right? We found power in being able to use those words and being able to go into these spaces where what I want to call them mixed spaces, where they're, I'm talking about the presence of white folks, that it is important because of the idea that Black people are dull and unimaginative and inferior and unintelligent, that it was important for us to be able to show up in the power of words, in the power of our vocabulary, in the power of communication, in the power of dialogue, and to be able to quote unquote go toe to toe with you. And so it is unfortunate that I know you are right. We use it as a weapon in other spaces. And I know in my relationships with some of my lovers, I've done that. I know I can talk you down, right? And so I've done that. Like, I'm not going to fight you. I don't want to put my hands on you, but my words are just as harmful, just as they inflict just as much pain. And so we can weaponize our language. And it's unfortunate that we do that. But what I feel like we should do is, again, recognize the power that we do have as a collective. So some people may not be able to have this expansive vocabulary, but then you give me your situation and I'll go in and talk for you, right? Like, all we have to do is begin to trust each other and trust the gifts and the talents that all of us bring and figure out a strategic way to use it. And that's part of the question about, can we talk? Can we talk about how all of us can work together with what we bring to the table to advance the conversation in whatever space we need to be in? Because in the work that I do, there are times when we ask, do we need a Black person at the head of the room? Or do we need somebody white? Who are they going to hear? Because at the end of the day, it's not about whether or not I'm Black and I can be in the front of the room. It's about who's going to hear the message, who's going to act on the words so that we can get the work done. That becomes the most important thing. And so we need to talk about strategy. I keep coming back to this, the point that we've been trying to make in many of my circles of conversation is about Black people waiting for the Congress, the federal government to decide something on behalf of Black folks, waiting for the local legislature to decide something on behalf of Black folks. Where is our agenda that we are going for, that we are taking to the people that serve us, that represent us, and say, no, this is what we want. I don't want you to try to figure out what I need. I'm going to tell you what I need. I'm going to make my demands known. I'm going to show up with my conversation so that I can demand what it is that we deserve as Black folks. When are we going to do that? And so can we talk about that? That is one of the questions that I have, that I continue to have. What's the Black agenda? Who's writing it? Who's ready to move forward with it? Who's ready to go present it? When are we going to present it? Where are we going to present? Like, that's what I want to talk about. And I'll be excited to hear from everybody. Like, when we going to do that? Y'all got y'all agenda ready? What's number one on the agenda? Talk about reparations. What does that look like? You can't just go in there and say, I demand reparations. What does it look like? And so we need to have all of these conversations. And again, Tevin Campbell, can we talk for a minute?
Just a minute. All we need is a minute. Yeah, we don't need an hour. We don't need a day. All we need is a minute.
Yeah, and you say that and we're laughing about it, but it was actually Dr. King who talked about the analysis of the paralysis of analysis, that there is a such thing as talking too much, that we end up doing nothing but talking. We talk about what we need to talk about, then we get together and talk about what we talked about, then we get together and talk about what we need to talk about the next time that we talk. And we so busy talking that nothing gets done. So there is such a thing as the paralysis of analysis.
Yeah, because I know I have, and I know you have, and I know many of you have gone through this scenario where you have a meeting to talk about an agenda, and then we're going to have another meeting to talk about the meeting we just had. When we're going to end up having another meeting, and you end up having all these meetings where nothing gets done, nothing gets written, no plan, no agenda. And eventually what happens is you get to a point and say, oh, I'm not going back.
Because nothing gets done.
Nothing gets done. And so that's what happens in Black spaces a lot. Is that
I think that happens in all spaces.
All spaces.
It happens for me in professional spaces, in Black spaces, in all spaces. Absolutely, that we spend too much time talking. So thank you all so much for joining us for Community Voices. This is a pre-recorded show. You have not been able to call in, but we will be live on next week, and that will be January 24th. We will have Dana Dossett from the city, talking about the bids that will be, it's a bid program. I'll let her tell you all about it on next week. Thank you all for joining us. We will be back. The workplace is going to be live on Thursday.
The Health Corner.
Oh, the Health Corner. The Health Corner is live. It's the third Thursday of the month. So the Health Corner happens on Thursday at 9 a.m. right here at KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. We will talk to you again soon. Thanks for tuning in. I don't know.